Welcome to Contact Center Showcase. I'm your host, Rod Jones, and this special edition, Lessons from the Lockdown. And special guest today, all the way from Durban, KZN, is Colin Salvesen, Mr Price Group. Colin is one of the group heads of IT. Am I correct on that, Colin?
Yes, 100%, Roger.
Excellent. Well, welcome to this little episode of Lessons from the Lockdown. Colin, can you give us a brief overview of the way you saw the world and your world of IT and contact center infrastructure in particular? Towards the end of last year, into December, January, was the world looking rosy? What was the future looking like? With a bit of a spin on your technology infrastructure, and I'd be very interested to know where you were envisaging going with digitization, self-service, etc. So, strategic view pre-COVID. Where were you?
Pre-COVID, yes. Well, thank you, Rod, and thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I think like many people, we were probably sailing into the festive season, a little bit exhausted from the year before, but also understanding that the year ahead was going to come with challenges in terms of economies, challenges in terms of customer needs. And we all were looking forward to that January of coming back rejuvenated and really tackling those issues. I think a lot of IT professionals will be working or would have been working on their route to cloud strategies, flexibility in terms of the technologies that we have at our disposal these days. That was definitely a hot topic. Customer experience, stuff like loyalty, massive topics in the market, and obviously the systems that surround that ecosystem to service those customers. And I think to a large degree, making sense of data, making sense of structured data so that you can take you can kind of get those technologies like your AI and your machine learning and really put them on steroids. But you would have needed that data to be robust and then to service those customers around the loyalty ecosystem there as well. So it was a rosy outlook, I think. I think we were looking forward to 2020, brand new decade, bringing in all the flexibility that cloud can offer us. And then, yes, February, March hit, and things changed.
Before we touch on that, give us an idea of the scale of your operations and the type of operations, inbound, outbound. Paint that picture so we can contextualize it.
Yeah, sure. So we have a 600-seat call center at Mr Price Money, and Mr Price Money is the trading division within the Mr Price Group that facilitates credit, insurance, and our telco strategy. And by virtue of having a contact center infrastructure to service those needs, we also took on the group customer care. And so group customer care would have been servicing those pillars, but as well as your in-store footprint and your e-commerce. So predominantly outbound in terms of the sales processes, and then a very large degree of collections, debt collection work, and then the inbound components of the customer care across those pillars as well.
Okay, and platforms, your predominant platforms that you're using to service these channels?
Yeah, so we're a Genesis partner. So our contact center telephony platform is Genesis. We had just recently included our customer experience platform was a platform called Incuba, which gave us a ticketing solution as well as social listening and text analytics. So very strong focus on getting our customer experience right. Yeah, and then we've got some, like most big corporates, we've got some of those good old workhorses that are just still there over the years that are those big systems that support all of those
legacy systems. Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah, the Achilles heel of many.
Okay, so that sets the scene, and then along came late February, early March, middle of March, the announcement of the state of disaster and the impending lockdown. Describe what was happening at that point of view from a strategic point of view or strategic activities.
Yeah, well, I think strategically, most of us just had a small panic attack. That was definitely the first port of call, because things like a conventional disaster recovery plan just kind of went out of the window. You weren't running off to another contact center on another electrical grid because it just wasn't going to be there. So it was very apparent quite quickly that we'd have to change things from a technology perspective, of course, from the work from home. So there was a massive scramble to get our hands on laptops, data cards, LTE dongles, that type of scenario. And really equipping the guys to work from home. And thankfully, the call center technology wasn't the issue at the time. It was really operationally, how do we make this happen? So again, it was boiling down to data and understanding. Yeah, it was basically understanding, well, which of our agents are we going to allow to work remotely? Which are the ones that are going to be critical to our customers throughout this time? So there was a big focus on the customer care element being one of those that are working from home. And of course, sales almost ground to a halt. Our big focus was on servicing our customers in terms of what are your major queries, what are your worries or issues. I mean, the predominant stuff that we saw coming through were people saying, look, I've ordered stuff online and now there's a lockdown. What's going to happen? Can I cancel orders? Can I get a refund? And overwhelmingly, one of the things that we saw was that from a collection standpoint, South Africans were really incredible, and they were mostly concerned about their credit record and saying, geez, how can we pay? And how can we keep ourselves in good standing? So in terms of the call center, there was that shift to say, let's work from home and let's go predominantly service, so from an inbound perspective. But the data that we got out of that was, okay, we need to start looking at alternative payment methods. Alternative contact channels. So it started to accelerate a lot of the thought that we had pre-COVID. Now it wasn't okay, let's see when we can get there nicely. It's like, we've got to do this, we've got to do this
overnight. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And did you manage to deploy some of those digital solutions, those self-service solutions in the short space of time?
Yeah, thankfully we did. So one of the big ones was trying to protect the credit portfolio and really listening to our customers and knowing that they needed payment, because understandably we're very reliant on our store network, and the store network now ceased to exist. Everything was closed. Mm-hmm. So sure, I'd probably say 95% of our payments were coming through stores. So we managed to integrate a scan to pay option within our MRP app, as well as bringing in a QR provider, which is Zapper, which we gave out to our customers as an option to pay. And we saw massive adoption across those QR code payment channels, which is really great. And I do think that's not only has it serviced the shutdown, but it's going to service us in the long term when people don't necessarily want to be handling cash potentially, or they want contactless payment even in the stores. So yeah, it was great. We actually accelerated some really, really good stuff that we've been hoping to do for a long time, and it just got pushed to the top of the queue.
Off the back burner. Two things about agents. Your impressions would be valuable. Did you find that initially there might have been a maintenance of a high level of service, all your KPIs, agent KPIs? How did your agents respond to working from home? Did you see a decline in operational efficiency or an increase?
You know, Rod, I think interestingly, I know we're going to talk about a call center agent, but associates across the board, the feedback has been phenomenal that they've probably been more busy and more productive from home than they have been ever in an office environment. So yes, we did have the technology available to monitor presence and talk times and handle times and all that good stuff, but we were very pleasantly surprised. I think it was probably a culmination of two things to my mind. That yes, it was a new way of working, which was exciting, but I think like most people around the world, there's this, okay, I need to prove that I want to hold on to my job, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, so it brought this kind of EQ, emotional kind of level to it. So I think the challenge hasn't necessarily been will agents be productive? Yes, they are. I think it's how do we as managers of these people keep them motivated, keep them from feeling desperate, and give them the tools so that they can service customers and actually get on with their job without feeling frustrated, because I think most people are just frustrated as a matter of course these days anyways.
Okay. Then I've picked it up on a few other discussions I've been having, that customers' attitudes early on in the lockdown, very forgiving of service levels and answer times, etc. Are you finding any change in customer attitudes and expectations?
Yeah, most definitely there's been a shift. And I think that the overarching, if I can go back to one of the earlier points that I made, was about this data and having context of your customers, and then I think through the context of the data that you have at hand, how do you then empathize? So we've put a large degree of focus on giving our agents the tools to know that when Rod phones, this is Rod, and this is what Rod looked like pre-COVID, and Rod could have been an amazing customer, one of those top payers, highest basket values, but post-COVID, he probably was a high flyer that maybe had to take a bump in salary. So we just don't know. So we've been driving a lot of that empathy, a lot of that compassion, not only with the agents, but then how we give them the tools to kind of put that onto our customers and be compassionate with them as well. So from a customer perspective, I think they have been forgiving. I think now as we in this country start to relax e-commerce rules and we say, okay, cool, now we can start trading. People will be, I want my blankets, I want my jerseys, and I think we'll ramp back into the I want. But for the most part, we've seen customers and agents alike being kind to each other.
Interesting. Okay, it's going to be interesting going forward, and that's really the next part of the discussion is the great unknown, the great future beyond COVID, whether it is the end of 2020 or into 21, assuming that we are over the hump on this one. Number one, in terms of infrastructure, do you see a migration back into bricks and mortar from a call center point of view, or a combination, or a hybrid? What is your personal view of that future?
Yeah. So I think, Rod, I think practically speaking, for the foreseeable future, there's every company in the country, in my opinion, is going to have a hybrid approach. I think that there's definitely going to be that, well, from a social distancing requirement, yes, it's going to be imposed on us. But I do think that you can create a lot more saving for a company in terms of your rentals, in terms of travel costs for your staff. So I think there's a financial component that we've got to look at here as well. So as much as it's a reality that yes, there's going to be this hybrid approach, what can we save to give back so that people aren't losing jobs? We are giving them gainful employment. So definitely there will be a hybrid.
Okay, interesting. And in terms of technology, advancements in the next 6 to 12 months, how do you see any changes in your platforms? You mentioned AI, analytics.
Yeah.
How do you see applying that into the new post-COVID world?
Yeah. So Rod, I think the days of talking about omnichannel and talking about route to cloud and talking about customer context are over. You've got to start doing. So you need to accelerate that. I mean, if you didn't have a digital strategy before, which I'd be hard pressed to find any companies who didn't. But whatever you've been thinking, you need to put a lot of emphasis on it right now. Taking it from the base, make sure that your technology platforms have got scale. And they've got flexibility, so that brings in the cloud discussion. Make sure that your data is solid and it's robust, so that you can start overlaying things like AI and chatbot technologies. I think as companies start to come under pressure, you will need to have call deflection. You will need to have chatbot technologies to pick up the slack where you can. But I don't think that a customer will ever want to talk to a robot only. So you're going to need to know when is that time just to hand off and go, okay, you've done your job, but now we need to speak to a human, and then potentially have that hybrid where you can flow in and out of those two streams, both from a customer engagement perspective, but from a cost saving perspective, from a corporate. And then, yeah, I mean, I just can't stress enough. If you don't know who your customer is and you don't provide them with the right choice at the right time on the channel of their choice, you will be dead in the water.
Okay.
So make sure you have those channels available. Make sure you know who that customer is and know when to interact with them at what time to put that deal in front of them. Albeit a collections deal, albeit a sales deal.
Sales.
Either or. Yeah.
As we're going to wrap up here, during this time, 6-8 weeks, what are the lessons that you as an organization have learned from this that you could share with the industry at large? Essentially in the contact center, customer service, CX space. 1 or 2 lessons learned.
Yeah, sure. I think, geez, there's so many, Rod, and please forgive me if I do repeat myself, but yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons for me is I think we need to give ourselves a lot more credit. as South Africans. I think a lot of the time we look at ourselves and we dial into conferences that are happening in the States or in the UK. But we have these technologies here. We have some great minds here, and South Africans by nature will make a plan. So I think one of the challenges as an IT professional is that if you open the cupboard, you'll take a look and you'll see multiple different types of softwares and multiple different types of systems. And if we're honest with ourselves, do we maximize these to 100% of their value? I'd be probably erring on the side of no. So one of the things was look internally, see what you have, not only in terms of your technology, but in terms of your people. Speak to them, engage with your agents, engage with your management, and engage with your customers. And then that 10% of that product you weren't using, that you just thought, that's nice to have, that could actually become 100% of your problem resolution. So I think the biggest lesson learned for us is make sure that whatever you've got, you maximize the use of. Talk, engage, have empathy for both your employees and your customers. And then just make sure that your systems are flexible enough to be able to capitalize on opportunities when they arise, because they will. I mean, every cloud has that silver lining. So we will come out of this and there will be opportunity.
Well, that's encouraging. Any final last words before we wrap up? Message to the industry, message to colleagues in similar positions to you?
Yeah, look, I do hope that we can all buy a hair dye as an essential service soon, because I think there's been a lot of grey creeping in over the last few weeks. But yeah, I just think my message to everybody is just stay safe and stay strong. We as South Africans and as humanity, we will get through this. And I think it's our time to shine as call center IT type professionals, where we can actually really try and safeguard our customers and safeguard our companies through great technologies and great strategies. And if deployed correctly, we can be the shining light. So let's stick together and we'll get through this. It's going to be an amazing journey, something we'll talk about for many years to come.
Excellent. Great insights, great inputs. Thank you so much, Colin. And we'll look forward to seeing you in face-to-face in Durban in the not too distant future.
Great, Rod. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Great pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers.